On a Saturday late morning, Marc, Grandi, Evan Giddings with you. We are reacting to the latest report from our Warriors insider, Anthony Slater, that not only have the Warriors and Klay Thompson kind of been frozen out of negotiations, on either side right now, nothing is going on at the moment, but the Warriors reportedly, according to Anthony Slater, have not even offered Klay a contract this offseason. Not a 3-year deal, which he was reportedly looking for, not a 2-year deal, not even a 1-year deal. The Warriors, according to Anthony Slater, have not even offered Klay Thompson a contract, period. And it seems as if, and understandably so, that has frustrated Klay Thompson to the point where he has unfollowed the Warriors on Instagram. He's deleted a number of pictures of him on that Instagram. And also, according to Slater, it has maybe upset him enough that even if the Warriors eventually come around and give Klay the years and the money that he wants, maybe he says, you know what, you've pissed me off enough, I want to leave anyway. That all from Anthony Slater via The Athletic earlier today, our Warriors insider Anthony Slater. But there are kind of, as we welcome you back, it's Marc, Grandi, and Evan Giddings. Evan, there are kind of some conflicting reports going on around the NBA right now, because earlier we heard from Tim McMahon of ESPN, covers the Mavericks specifically, but also the NBA as a whole. He said on the Hoop Collective podcast via ESPN that the Warriors reportedly offered Klay Thompson a 2-year deal. But now Anthony Slater of The Athletic is saying the Warriors haven't offered him anything. There's the report that Klay is looking for a 3-year deal. The Magic reportedly not interested in giving him a 3-year deal. We have all these kind of odd reports that are kind of butting heads. I tend to believe Slater because he's plugged in this like nobody else, but McMahon of ESPN saying the Warriors offered him a 2-year deal. Slater saying they haven't offered him anything. I don't know what to believe.
Yeah, it's really hard right now, but it also, the timing of the scrubbing is also interesting too, because I originally thought that, well, if it is true that Klay Thompson was thinking about a 2-year deal from the Warriors, but he wants 3, well then, you take down some pictures, you unfollow him on Instagram, that's the signal publicly that you're unhappy with maybe the years or the money. But Slater just dropped a bomb an hour ago and basically said there's no money or years. Like, there hasn't been a contract
There's been
offer.
nothing.
It sounds like there hasn't been a single, well, there's probably been negotiations, but the talks have frozen. So whatever the negotiations were, likely between Klay's agent and the front office, that they've gone nowhere. So, like, they are at an impasse. This is a standoff right now. And it seems, how I read it, is the Warriors are basically asking Klay Thompson to dictate his own market. And then if he decides that, or he finds out whatever he's worth, then he can either choose to take it somewhere else or get it back in Golden State. I think the Warriors are betting on the fact that Klay Thompson's services are not going to be wanted, as much as right here at home. And that I should say that the difference between leaving, they're banking on Klay being a hometown boy and eventually taking a hometown discount.
It does seem that way, yeah. And if you are the Warriors, like this, it makes sense, right? Like this seems to be a sound business decision, a sound basketball decision. And when I say decision, nothing has been finalized yet. But at this moment, Evan, for the Warriors, the Warriors' path to getting better and to being a better basketball team, maybe it comes at the risk of alienating one of your franchise greats and pissing him off and making him upset. And maybe he leaves and it gets a little ugly. And maybe he signs somewhere else and his introductory presser, he badmouths the Warriors. Like, maybe it gets ugly. It seems to be the right thing for the Warriors to do in this moment is to not agree to a contract with Klay at this moment, to allow yourself room to explore other options. And for that, while I completely understand how it might upset Klay, I think the Warriors deserve a little bit of credit for being willing to potentially make the tough decision and to potentially upset one of your franchise greats for the sake of trying to improve the team. Like, that's not an easy thing to do. And while it is upsetting and difficult, I think the Warriors do deserve a little bit of credit for at least being willing to go out there and maybe upset one of your greats.
I wouldn't give him credit for that. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I also don't think it's that
like you don't want to just give
a choice, though.
You just don't want to give out a thank you contract for the sake of the fact that he won you 4 titles.
But why can't you give out a thank you contract? Because you've already given out 3 thank you contracts the last 2 years, and one of them's no longer on the team.
Okay, so maybe no credit is deserved, but we can agree that it's probably the right decision and the smart decision.
Yeah, but it's also a result of you making poor decisions. So, like Klay Thompson, again, he's going to have to fall on the sword in all probability because the Warriors have expended themselves. They've spent a ton of money, and they've put it in the wrong places for the most part. Andrew Wiggins right now is a bad contract. They tried to trade him at the deadline.
Remember when he signed and it was a gigantic discount?
And it was a great deal. Yeah. Jordan Poole. I forget who said it last year. Someone on ESPN. It might be the worst contract in the NBA right now.
I think it was Bobby Marks as well.
Now, credit to them for getting off that contract, but they still gave him that deal. Andrew Wiggins is a bad contract. Draymond Green, after 1 year, as still effective as a player as Draymond Green is, if he's going to be suspended for 25 games for the remaining 3 years of his contract, that's a bad deal. That's a bad contract. So Klay Thompson, I understand why he's pissed off. I also understand why the Warriors do not want to give in to his wants or demands because they put themselves in a position where they can't keep giving out these thank you contracts, especially after a season in which you didn't have a single playoff home game.
Okay, so what becomes important here isn't just like ultimately what happens with Klay, and that's obviously part of this whole thing. But the reason why it seems, and we can read between the lines, and Slater even said as much, the Warriors are trying to set themselves up to make a bigger move. Part of this Klay situation is to wait with Klay. Wait with Klay. Just wait, because you want to have enough space to be able to move spots around, pieces around, and maybe get another contract in here. The risk is you alienate Klay, and maybe you lose him entirely. And as we both agree, he's still a valuable piece on this team. You need his shooting. You need shooting, period. There becomes like the other half of this, which is, okay, what is the option that is leading you down this road? Like, what is the risk? What is the reward to this risk of Klay Thompson? Like, you're risking losing Klay. What's the reward here? And there's a big move, potentially, that is out there. What is the move, Evan, that makes what they're doing to Klay Thompson worth that risk? Because it has to be something that moves the needle at least a little bit to make this worth it.
Well, I think there's 2 big names that are or will be on the trade market very soon that have been reported this week. One of them is Paul George, who can opt into his 48.7 and then be used in a trade by the Clippers.
Could you do a sign-in trade with Paul George too?
Yeah. I mean, you could, and that's maybe what he wants.
Probably.
He wants a new contract.
Yeah.
You could also trade for Jimmy Butler, who's got 2 years left at around $48 or $49 million. I think those are the 2 players that the Warriors are weighing. I think Paul George is on the table. I think Jimmy Butler is on the table. And so it's not as if the Warriors don't want Klay. I just don't think that they're willing to put a contract on the table that would jeopardize the possibility of upgrading to another star. And I think the 2 stars that are on the market and that are gettable are Paul George and Jimmy Butler. And those are probably the 2 guys that the Warriors are trying to figure out how they fit, how they can get them, what they have to give up. And that means, Klay, you're going to be on the back burner. So are the Warriors trying to piss Klay off on purpose? No. I think they're trying to get better. And the residual effect of that might just be pissing off Klay Thompson.
So are the Warriors, say, with Jimmy Butler, and say you got to trade, obviously you got to give matching money. Say it gets done and Chris Paul is involved and Jonathan Kuminga is involved and picks are involved, and you get Jimmy Butler back. Okay? You get Jimmy Butler back, you lose Chris Paul, okay, that's whatever. You're not planning on having him around anyway. You lose Jonathan Kuminga and you lose picks, and maybe there's other piece or 2 in there as well. Say that also means you don't get Klay back. Maybe he doesn't sign somewhere else immediately, but he's so upset at you that you don't get him back. Let's just say the net, subtraction, the net addition subtraction here is you get Jimmy Butler, you lose Klay, Kuminga, Chris Paul, and picks. Is that worth it? Does that make the Warriors a better basketball team?
I mean, I think they're telling you yes. Otherwise, I think Klay Thompson would have at least an offer. Like if bringing Klay back was a part of the Warriors getting significantly better, I don't think this report comes out. I don't think we hear that they're not speaking or that talks have frozen. I mean, just from a bird's eye view and at a quick glance after reading all this, I'm just looking at the Warriors salary table for next season. And I do think it's very clear that Klay Thompson is not a priority because right now, the difference between what the Warriors have on the books, including Chris Paul, and the second apron is roughly $15 or $16 million. So if they want to use and combine contracts, they're going to have to stay below that. That means right now they might not have budgeted more than $15 million for Klay Thompson. If they want to use multiple deals to bring back a big boy player and also remain under the second apron, which Joe Lacob has not just said is a priority, but now his actions are showing me that it is the priority to stay below the second apron. So
he said he might want to get all the way out of the cap entirely, which seems very unlikely. But you're right, at least under the second apron.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they can completely get out of the salary cap unless they want to not re-sign Klay, move off of Chris, and if their intention is to bring back Looney, that also would be a contract that they'd probably move off of. But regardless, yeah, I think Chris Paul's the next big domino, because he's the one that can that can bring back a big boy. And so if you're looking at Chris, 30, you're looking at Kuminga is going to be 7.5. I think someone like Gary Payton II might probably be a salary filler. Moses Moody is going to be making close to 6 next season. He's also extension eligible this summer. Maybe they don't want to have him beyond 2025.
And has maybe a little bit of value still as a young guy.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Pajemski could be in there. Like all of these things they could do to go out and get somebody worth, $45 to $50 million. I think that's the player they're targeting. And that's the player that is, if he's here, probably going to cost Klay his roster spot.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, it's Marc, Grandi, Evan, and Giddings with you. 888-957-9570. Anthony Slater of The Athletic has reported, I'm going to read a portion of this for you. Quote, Klay Thompson isn't currently mulling a shorter than desired offer from the Golden State Warriors. Despite a wide open negotiation window, there isn't a 1-year, 2-year, or 3-year deal on the table because nothing is currently on the table according to league sources. There has been no productive discussion between the Warriors and Thompson or his representatives. Talks are essentially frozen. With free agency less than 10 days away, Thompson's exit from the only franchise he has ever known feels closer and more probable than ever before. That's pulled straight from the Slater article on The Athletic. He later tweeted out with the link to the article saying, quote, there has been no offer made. So it's not just that an offer was made, denied by Klay, and then pulled off the table by the Warriors. There hasn't been any offer made by the Warriors, which, as we've talked about, signals, I think, very clearly, very obviously, that Klay Thompson is not the Warriors' priority. He has, understandably so, gotten frustrated and upset, or so it appears, unfollowed the Warriors on social media, on Instagram, deleted some photos, and is now potentially testing the market. What is even more interesting, as Slater reports, is that the market potentially is not as hot on Klay Thompson as we previously thought. We brought up the $30 million number quite often. That was a number that Bobby Marks, ESPN's NBA salary cap expert, threw out a number of months ago about Klay Thompson's potential free agency value this offseason. Maybe he wants 3 years. Maybe he's not getting the right years. Maybe he wants $30 million, and maybe he's not getting anywhere near $30 million. And free agency has not even opened yet, so there's still a lot of time for all this to change and develop. But the development from Anthony Slater, no contract offer from the Warriors to Klay, and the market maybe a little bit more scarce. Maybe it's teams worried about Klay's injury history and his age. Maybe it's teams worried about the salary cap and the tax. But there are a lot of teams out there who are under the cap and have room to spend and have money to spend. But according to Slater, perhaps even those teams aren't willing to meet Klay Thompson's contract demands. So it's turning into a game of chicken. Who is going to flinch first? And the Warriors are betting that it's going to be Klay Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, if this is true and Slater's reporting that the Warriors have essentially not even opened up conversations after the finals. I think the Warriors are okay with letting him walk. Like I think they're all right with the big three being broken up. I mean, that's essentially the report. They're okay if Klay Thompson's not on the team next year. And some people might perceive that as disrespectful. I think more people than last year are also reading it as, essential. But either way, it's a big move. Like, I know that I don't read it as Klay Thompson being a priority for the Warriors, but it is a big change if Klay Thompson's no longer wearing a Warriors jersey next year. And that's going to be a shock to a lot of people. But the Warriors are no longer in a position to where they can, I guess, kind of just operate and run things back. Like you said, Mark, I don't think they can run this back. And if they think that Klay Thompson means that they are locked into just keeping the band together because of money or because of play style or because he won't, acquiesce to a new role, I don't know what the reason is, but if Klay Thompson represents running it back to them, I don't think they want to do that.
Yeah, it seems that way. And now I guess if we play this out, like what's the worst case scenario? Warriors delay on a potential Klay deal. They upset him. They try to take a big swing and it doesn't work out. For whatever reason, it doesn't work out. You end up cutting Chris Paul or whatever, and you don't have him. But you save those $30 million, but you're not able to get anyone of value back, so you lose that contract slot as well. You get Looney back, you have GP2 back, but you pissed off Klay enough that he doesn't want to come back either. So now suddenly you don't, the wiggle room you allowed yourself by delaying the Klay deal didn't really pay off. You lose Chris Paul, you lose Klay, and you have no room to do anything else unless you're trading away Wiggins, which, okay, maybe you want to do that. It's a decent amount of money. You trade away Kuminga. You trade away Moody. If this gamble doesn't pay off, the Warriors don't have a lot of other room to make moves where you clearly say that makes them better, because the only other way to get someone of value back at that point that can legitimately help you is to give away more of your prized assets like a Jonathan Kuminga, potentially. And if you're already without Klay and you're already without Chris Paul and you get rid of Kuminga, suddenly this team looks entirely different. So it is a risk because this could go poorly. You need two sides to make a deal, to make a trade. And you're not going to just sign Paul George because you can't. You're over the cap. You can't just sign a major free agent like that. You're going to have some other team work with you. And there's a chance that this all does not work out. You lose Klay, you lose Chris Paul, you lose that contract slot, and now you're stuck back at square one.
Yeah, I think the larger risk to me is losing the favor of the fans, but I don't think Joe Lacob necessarily cares about that, because I think they also wouldn't be willing to kind of play this game of chicken if they didn't believe that their younger players weren't ready to maybe have to fill that void. Like I think the stretch, now he's not a perfect player in my mind, and hopefully he's got a lot more to grow. But I think Podziemski stepping in as the starting two and the Warriors being as successful as they were with him as the starter kind of gave them some confidence of they might have, not the heir apparent, but they might be able to still win 45 or 46 games if Klay Thompson's no longer there.
Well, and that was the report from just this week. Reportedly, the Warriors are looking at Podziemski as just being the starting two all next year.
I mean, one of the reasons I wanted Klay back was as a sixth man. Like I don't think his days. I think his days as a starter or as a helpful starter to like a contending team are done. And if he's playing north of 30 minutes a night at age 35, I just don't think he's going to be able to help you more than he hurts you. So yeah, I mean, whether it's Podziemski, whether it's Moody, I think the question I would have for the Warriors was like, do you really think that your young guys are ready for this type of responsibility? But then again, tick-tock, because Kuminga is going to have money coming his way either this summer or next offseason. Same with Moses Moody. And then a year from now, you're going to be thinking about what you want to do with Pod. So they have to start also thinking about their younger players and where they fit in their future as much as where the older players fit. And that's where I think Klay Thompson probably doesn't want to take a back seat to some of these, quote, unproven guys. But the fact of the matter is, Klay Thompson is kind of over the hill. It doesn't mean he can't be a still productive player. It doesn't mean he can't help teams on given nights, but I think he's stuck still in 2022, and the Warriors are trying to be a team that thinks about 2026.
Yeah, I think maybe the Klay conversation, and he seems frustrated now, and it's totally fair and understandable. I think most of us in his situation would feel the same exact way. It's partly because of the waiting on a contract offer from the Warriors, and the report is from Slater, Anthony Slater of The Athletic, the Warriors haven't even offered him a contract, period. So that's part of the frustration. Like, why haven't you at least offered me something yet? Like, I'm a franchise great. I deserve something. The other part of this is, even if the Warriors were to offer him something, it might just be to, be the sixth man and come off the bench. And Podziemski's our starter. And that in and of itself might also upset Klay. So it might not only just be the fact that he hasn't been offered a contract, but it might also be the plan that the Warriors have for Klay this coming season, if he does indeed come back, is one he does not want. And maybe that leads to, what Anthony Slater was writing about. Another part of this story that he wrote was, even if the contracts that he get from other teams on the open market is not what he was expecting, he doesn't want to sign them, and the Warriors ultimately acquiesce and give him what he wants, he might be upset enough to not want to do that. Like, he might not even want to be on the Warriors, not just because of the slight that he feels because he hasn't been offered something yet, but because he just doesn't want the role that the Warriors want to pigeonhole him into.
No, I also think a telling nugget from Slater's story refers to Malik Monk, which is Monk chose to essentially not test free agency because he could get the fourth year with the Kings. He could get the player option, and that would give him more stability. So I think the Warriors would be willing to still have a 2-year offer on the table, but I think that they're hoping that Klay Thompson goes out and finds that there's nobody that's willing to give him anything longer than 2 years. And then it's just a question of, Klay, can you swallow your pride and come back because you've perceived these slights and you feel disrespected by the Warriors? But I think the Warriors are banking on, Klay, you're going to feel disrespected by the market. Like, you're going to have to swallow your pride wherever you go. And at the very least, you can stay here, be at home, a place that you are comfortable in. You might not be happy at first, but at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to, you can't have both. You're not going to be able to eat your cake and have it too. And that's what the market is telling us. And I think the Malik Monk contract is a pretty good example that if you want to be rewarded, it might be better off just to stay put.
Maybe. From the Xfinity Mobile text line, 530 says, and this is what you were talking about, Klay isn't back and leaves in free agency. There will be a lot of pissed off Dubs fans looking to go off. Re-sign Klay. And that's fair. And it's what you're talking about, Evan. If Klay does not come back, I think sometimes we kind of get caught in this social media wormhole where everything we see on social we feel is representative of the entire fan base. I think there are so many fans out there that absolutely adore Klay, despite some of the issues recently. And if he leaves and it appears that the Warriors were the main reason that they kind of pushed him out and were willing to take that risk, there's going to be a lot of upset Warrior fans. And there's one of them on our text line right now, the 530, saying, re-sign Klay. If you don't, we're going to be ready to go off. And the way it's currently playing out, it seems like the Warriors are the aggressors in leading to that potential reality.
Well, that's why I think as much as it is about basketball, again, I think it's also about the optics of it. It's about how you can control the narrative of the choice that you're going to have to make. Because even if Klay Thompson comes back, there might still be some fans that feel like Klay was disrespected, or they're going to be shocked at whatever number he re-signs for, or they might feel like he's going to be a problem because he feels like he's better than Pods or feels like he's better than Moody. People might perceive him as a locker room cancer. I don't know how they see Klay Thompson, but I do know that there's a large contingent of fans that will love Klay no matter what, and they'll always appreciate everything that he's done for them and will never be an anti-Klay type of fan. That's all well and good, but at the end of the day, I think the Warriors are trying to, in a perfect world if Klay walks, to set this up as he chose to not come back. We extended the olive branch for what was fair for us in order for us to get better. And they can always fall on the built-in excuse that, look, we missed the playoffs last year. We had to make adjustments. And it sucks that Klay Thompson just chronologically is the first guy that we have to move off of. But that's just business. And I think that's the kind of narrative that they're trying to put out or that they're going to try to create. But this Slater story certainly messes with the gumbo pot.
Yeah, it does. Really quickly, before we get on out of here, YouTube chat powered by First NorCal Credit Union, Atco Pest Control, with a super chat, $5 to say the text line we read, the 530, he does not speak for all Warriors fans. I don't want him back. Yeah, there's people on both sides.
Yeah.
There's people on both sides. It does seem to be the anti-Klay contingent is generally louder on social media than the pro-Klay contingent. I'm just saying there are fans on both sides, but that's all we have time for today here.